I went to Gaza with my mind made up. I thought I understood what I was walking into. War-torn streets, broken homes, headlines turned real. And yes, I saw that. I saw the devastation. But in the middle of that destruction, I met a family that shifted something deep inside me. I'll never forget them. A mother, a father, 3 children, no electricity, no clean water, no real safety. Their walls were cracked, but their hearts whole, strong, open. They had every reason to shut the world out, but when I knocked, they opened their door with a smile, not a fake one, a real one that said, "We still believe in good." I remember sitting on the floor with them, eating bread they had made that morning, flour, water, salt, nothing fancy, and yet it tasted like the most valuable thing I had ever been given because they shared it with dignity, with honor, with peace. That father looked me in the eyes and said, "We are still thankful, in a place where bombs were falling just a few blocks away, where they hadn't had electricity for days. Thankful." That word hit me hard. It tore through every comfort I'd ever taken for granted. They gave me more than food. They gave me perspective. I saw how the children clung to their mother, not in fear, but in trust. I saw how the father kept smiling for them, even when his eyes told a different story. They didn't need pity. They didn't even ask for help. What they gave was love. Raw, unfiltered love from people the world often chooses to ignore. And that kind of love, that kind of courage is rare, it's sacred, it strips away your ego and leaves you face to face with truth. That night, as I walked back through the dark alleys of Gaza, I wasn't the same person. Something inside me had cracked wide open. That family had nothing, yet they gave me everything. Not money, not material, something deeper. They showed me that kindness and hardship is the purest kind, and that kind of humanity doesn't just touch you, it changes you forever. They prayed while the world around them crumbled 5 times a day, no matter what. I remember sitting with the family as the sun dipped behind the horizon, smoke still rising in the distance, and the call to prayer echoed through the shattered streets. The father stood, then the mother, then the children. No panic, no hesitation, just stillness, focus, peace. And in that moment, I saw something I didn't expect. A quiet defiance, a kind of strength that didn't need to raise its voice. Their faith wasn't performative. It was personal, intimate, woven into every breath they took. It made me think about what I put my faith in, how easily I get thrown off by inconvenience, by discomfort. Meanwhile, this family bowed their heads on cracked tiles, feet bare, knowing full well the roof above them might not last the night. That shook me. I'm used to faith being a Sunday routine, something you schedule around a busy life, but theirs was a lifeline, a discipline, a compass in the chaos. I watched as the mother whispered prayers with her youngest in her arms, her eyes closed, not in fear, but in connection, not asking for miracles, just giving thanks, holding on to hope like it was air. Later that night, I asked the father, "How do you stay so grounded?" He smiled and said, "When the world is unstable, you have to be stable in your soul." That line hit me like a freight train because I realized I'd been measuring strength all wrong. I thought strength was about control, power, winning. But in their world, strength was surrender. It was faith when there's no guarantee. It was believing in peace when all you see is destruction. The family showed me that real faith doesn't demand proof. It walks forward anyway. And it wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic. It was quiet and real, a kind of resilience that sits deep in the bones, the kind you only build when you've lost everything but choose to believe anyway. That night, as I lay awake listening to the distant sounds of war, I wasn't afraid. I was humbled. That family, through their faith, gave me a new definition of strength, one I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. You hear about courage all the time on screens and headlines and the stories we like to tell ourselves. But it's usually the loud kind, the explosive kind, the kind that comes with medals and music in the background. But that's not the courage I saw in Gaza. The courage I saw wore no armor. It didn't stand on a stage. It moved quietly through a broken kitchen where a mother baked bread for her children while drones hummed overhead. Her hands steady, her face calm. That's the kind of courage that doesn't flinch, even when the sky threatens to fall. I remember the father sitting with his son, teaching him how to read by candlelight, not just letters, but dignity. No matter where we are, you are still a man, he told the boy. You still carry your name. I'll never forget that. In a place where entire families vanish overnight, this man was teaching his child how to stand tall, not with fists, but with values, with identity. That's a courage built from something deeper than fear, from the decision to keep living with purpose, even when the world strips away everything else. And what struck me most was how natural it was for them. It wasn't a performance. No camera was rolling. No one was watching, except me. They weren't trying to inspire. They were just surviving. But with so much grace, it felt like witnessing something holy, something sacred. I saw a girl share her only toy with a stranger. I saw a boy offer half his sandwich to someone who had less than he did. That's not just bravery. That's heart. That's soul. That's courage in its purest form. Back home, we mistake noise for strength. We celebrate the loudest, the boldest, the ones who push to the front. But in Gaza, this family showed me that real courage is quiet. It's patient. It's persistent. It wakes up every day in a place where everything says, give up, and chooses to say, not today. They showed me that strength isn't about winning, it's about enduring, about choosing love over fear again and again, no matter the cost. And once you see that kind of courage, you can't unsee it. It stays with you. It changes the way you move through the world. I thought I was there to witness tragedy, to see a war zone with my own eyes, maybe even bring back stories the world had forgotten. I had my camera, my questions, my assumptions. I thought I knew who needed saving, but that changed the moment I sat down with them. This Muslim family in Gaza, humble, worn by conflict, yet somehow still whole. They didn't need saving. I did. They didn't preach to me. They didn't tell me I was wrong. They just lived. They showed me through every quiet act that they had a strength I lacked. I had comfort, freedom, choices, but they had something more powerful: clarity, purpose, a centered way of being that I didn't even realize I'd lost. Every time I opened my mouth to offer help, they responded with hospitality. When I tried to give, they gave more, not out of pride, but out of principle. It was their way, their culture, their faith, and it dismantled every stereotype I had unconsciously carried with me. One afternoon, I watched the mother wrap a scarf around her daughter's head before prayer. She did it so gently, so lovingly, and I saw something sacred in it, something I'd overlooked. It wasn't oppression, it was devotion, it was identity, it was beauty. And that's when I realized that I hadn't come to bear witness, that I'd come to be humbled. Everything I thought I knew about suffering, about resilience, about faith, got stripped down piece by piece until all that was left was the truth. I had been carrying a version of the world shaped by distance, by comfort, by media headlines and filtered empathy. But that family brought me close enough to feel what I'd only ever heard about. They saw me not as a foreigner, not as an outsider, but as a guest. And they treated me with more grace than I probably deserved. I came with questions, they answered them with their lives. No lectures, just love, just real, honest, raw living in the face of fear. And in that, I found a mirror I didn't expect. They showed me the parts of myself I'd neglected, the soft parts, the human parts. And they reminded me that sometimes the people we think we've come to help are the very ones sent to help us. There's a line I'll never forget. We don't hate. The father said it with a soft voice, his eyes locked on mine, and it didn't make sense at first. Not after everything I had seen, the bullet holes in their walls, the names written on a small photo of relatives who were no longer alive, the fear that lingered in the silence between explosions. How do you not hate when everything around you is designed to make you angry, to break you, to push you to that edge? But they hadn't gone there. They'd chosen another path. And that's when I realized I wasn't just seeing forgiveness, I was seeing freedom. Not the kind written into laws or carved into constitutions, the kind that lives in the heart. That family had decided that their spirit, their love, their humanity, those things couldn't be touched by war, couldn't be stolen by injustice. That shook me to my core. I came into Gaza thinking I was emotionally prepared, but I wasn't ready to be loved by people who had every reason to close themselves off. I wasn't ready for that kind of openness, that kind of strength. They didn't ask me what country I was from. They didn't care what religion I practiced. All they saw was another human being. And in that moment, all the walls I had built up inside myself came crashing down. My biases, my assumptions, my categories, gone. Because love like that doesn't check passports, doesn't care what you believe or who you voted for. It just is. And it moves through people who have every excuse to harden their hearts, but choose instead to soften them. I thought I knew what compassion looked like. I've seen charity. I've seen activism. I've seen kindness. But this was something else. It was deeper. It was quiet and firm and unstoppable. And it made me ask myself a question I hadn't asked in years. What kind of person am I when it's hard to be kind? That family in Gaza taught me something that no book. The more time I spent with that family in Gaza, the more I began to understand something that no map, no border, no headline could teach me. The heart has no borders. I remember the youngest daughter, no older than 5, slipping her tiny hand into mine as we walked through the rubble of what used to be her school. She didn't know me. She didn't speak my language, but she smiled at me like we'd known each other forever. That's when it hit me. Connection doesn't need translation. They never once asked who I prayed to. They never questioned where I stood politically. They didn't care what label the world gave me. What they cared about was simple. Was I kind? Was I present? Was I human? And the answer to that in their world was all that mattered. Sitting on their floor, drinking sweet tea out of chipped glasses, I felt closer to them than I had to people I'd known my whole life. There was something so pure about the way they let me in, without suspicion, without hesitation, just open arms and open hearts. That family saw me not as a foreigner, not as an outsider. They saw me as a guest, and they honored me like I was one of their own. And it was in those quiet moments, the passing of bread, the soft laughter of the children, the shared silence during prayer, that I realized we are all the same. When we allow ourselves to be, strip away the noise, the fear, the lines on a map. And what's left? People, just people, wanting to love, wanting to protect their children, wanting peace. What this family gave me was more than hospitality. They gave me a truth I will carry for the rest of my life. Compassion is not tied to race, religion, or region. It's tied to choice. They chose love in a place where hate is easier. They chose to see me not for my identity, but for my intentions. And in that, they reminded me that the world doesn't change when systems shift. It changes when hearts open. That family didn't just change my mind, they changed my heart. And hearts have no borders.